I thought the backpack was empty, until a folded note slipped out, signed by someone who shouldn't have known my name. I only opened that old backpack because the zipper caught on something. It was the same faded navy blue bag I'd carried through middle school, shoved into the back of my closet for years. I was cleaning out my room, one of those late Saturday impulses when you grab a trash bag and promise yourself you'll be ruthless. The backpack felt lighter than I remembered, almost hollow. But when I shook it, something inside rustled. Probably an old gum wrapper or a forgotten worksheet, I thought. Nothing meaningful. Nothing anyone would care about. But then a single piece of paper slid out from the smallest pocket. It wasn't crumpled like old homework, this one had been folded carefully, with intention. Like someone wanted it to be found, someday. My name was written across the front. Not the way teachers wrote it. Not the way friends casually scribbled it on birthday cards. No, this handwriting looked deliberate. Soft. Almost familiar, yet I couldn't place it. My chest tightened. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the note between my fingers. For a moment, I didn't open it. I just stared at it, as if it held a piece of the past I wasn't sure I was ready to face. Who would have left a message in my backpack? And why hadn't I discovered it until now, years later? A strange warmth moved through me, the kind that comes right before a memory returns. But nothing came. Only a quiet, unsettling curiosity. Finally, I unfolded the paper. The message was short. Only one sentence. One day, you'll understand why you were worth saving. My pulse stopped. Those words felt too intimate. Too knowing. Too heavy. Worth saving? I read it again. And again. A memory nudged at the edge of my mind, someone's voice, someone's kindness, but it vanished before I could catch it. Then I noticed something else. At the bottom of the note was a signature. A name I hadn't heard in years. A name I thought I had forgotten. A name that made my breath snag in my throat. Because this person shouldn't have known what I was going through back then. Yet somehow, they did. And they were reaching out to me from a past I barely remembered. The signature at the bottom of the note wasn't bold or dramatic. It was small, almost shy, written in handwriting I hadn't seen since I was barely a teenager. Liam. I whispered the name out loud, testing it on my tongue like something foreign. Liam. Back then, he wasn't someone I talked about. Not someone my family knew. He was just a quiet presence that showed up in my life exactly when I needed someone the most. Not a best friend. Not even a close friend. More like a brief, passing kindness in a year that felt too heavy for someone my age. And yet, he had left a message like this? A message I never found? A message hidden where only fate could reveal it years later? I sat there, still holding the paper, trying to pull any clear memory of him into focus. But everything was blurry, fragments, loose pieces. I remembered the year, though. 7th grade. The year everything felt too big. When school hallways felt loud and sharp, and my chest always felt tight for reasons I couldn't explain to anyone. Most days, I kept my head down. Teachers said I was quiet. Kids said I was weird. I just tried to make it through the day without feeling like I was taking up too much space. And then there was Liam. He always sat 2 rows behind me in homeroom. He didn't talk much either, but he had this way of noticing things, small things, without making them uncomfortable. Like the day I forgot my lunch and pretended I wasn't hungry. He slid half of his sandwich onto my desk without saying a word. Or the time he saw me shaking after a stressful morning and simply asked if I wanted to sit outside for a few minutes, as if it were the most normal, reasonable thing in the world. Not pity. Not attention. Just gentleness. But he moved away after that school year. His family left suddenly, no goodbye, no explanation. One day he was in class, the next day his desk was empty. And now, this note? Was it something he left before he moved? Why would he write something like "you were worth saving"? What did he see in me that I didn't see in myself? My fingers trembled slightly as I turned the paper over to see if there was more. Nothing. Just that strange, powerful sentence, left for me to find alone. But then I spotted something else. A faint crease on the backpack's inner lining, like something had been pressed there for a long time, like maybe this note wasn't the only thing hidden. A cold shiver ran up my arms. Had Liam left something else for me? And if he did, what was I supposed to find next? I set the note down gently, almost afraid it might crumble if I handled it too much. Then I picked up the old backpack again, feeling its weight, lighter than it used to be, yet somehow heavier with meaning now. The crease I noticed wasn't from normal use. It looked almost like a seam someone had tugged on before. Maybe a hidden pocket, or a pocket I simply never noticed as a kid. I pushed my fingers along the inside lining until I felt it, an edge that wasn't fully sewn down. A corner I could slip my hand into. My heartbeat quickened. I didn't remember this pocket. In fact, I was pretty sure it wasn't there when I used the backpack in school. It felt like something added later. Something intentional. Slowly, I reached inside. At first, all I touched was fabric, thin, worn, softened by years in storage. But then my fingertips brushed something different. Something stiff. Something rectangular. I carefully pulled it out. It was a small photograph. The edges were bent, corners soft from time, but the image was still clear. It was taken in our school courtyard, the old stone benches, the patchy grass, the mural that looked like a kid painted it during recess. And there, sitting on one of the benches, was me. I was staring down at my shoes, knees pulled up slightly, like I was trying to make myself smaller. The picture captured a moment I didn't remember, or maybe I had just tried not to. But that wasn't the part that stopped my breath. Standing behind me, half in the picture, half cropped out, was Liam. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't posing. He wasn't even looking at the camera. He was looking at me. Watching me with this quiet, protective expression, as if he knew something I didn't. As if he was making sure I was okay without letting me know he was doing it. My chest tightened. Who took this picture? How did Liam get it? And why would he hide it here, where only I might find it someday? On the back of the photo, written in the same soft handwriting as the note, were 4 words. You weren't alone then. I had to sit down. The room suddenly felt too still, like the world was holding its breath. I thought about that year, how isolated I felt, how invisible. And yet here was proof that someone, even quietly, had been looking out for me. But something didn't add up. Liam never took pictures. He barely even had a phone back then. So who captured this moment? And more importantly, why did Liam think I needed to find this, now? As those questions swirled in my mind, something inside me whispered that this wasn't just nostalgia or forgotten kindness. This was the beginning of something bigger. A truth buried years ago. A truth tied to a boy who left my life without explanation. And a message that suggested he knew far more about me than I ever realized. I kept staring at the photograph, my thumb brushing the bent corner as if touching it might unlock the memory. But nothing came, just a strange mix of warmth and unease settling in my chest. Why would Liam leave me something so personal? Why hide it instead of giving it to me directly? And why disappear right after? My mind drifted back to 7th grade again, to those quiet mornings when the school hallways felt too bright and too loud. I remembered how I always sat alone in the courtyard before the first bell, pretending I liked being by myself. But I wasn't good at pretending. Someone must have noticed that. And apparently, someone did. What bothered me wasn't just the message, it was the feeling that Liam had seen something in me I didn't even see in myself at the time. Something that maybe I wasn't ready to confront. I looked at the note again. One day, you'll understand why you were worth saving. That sentence felt heavier now. More real. Almost haunting. Worth saving from what? I sat back on my bed, my old backpack lying open beside me like a doorway into a life I forgot. My room felt different, quiet in a way that made my thoughts echo louder. Then another memory surfaced, sharp enough to make my breath catch. A day when I had stayed home from school. My mom told the office I wasn't feeling well, but the truth was, I just couldn't face the day. Everything felt too heavy, and I told her I had a stomachache so she wouldn't ask more questions. She didn't push it. She just let me rest. But that afternoon, there was a knock at the door. I remembered opening it and seeing no one there, just something on the doormat. A small, plain brown envelope with no name. Inside was a single piece of candy and a sticky note that said, "Take a break today. Tomorrow will be lighter." I always assumed it was from a teacher or someone from school trying to be kind. I never questioned it. But the handwriting, now that I thought about it, looked awfully similar to the note from the backpack. Was that Liam too? Had he been reaching out in ways I never connected? The thought hit me unexpectedly. Maybe he knew I was struggling long before I ever said anything. Maybe he saw what I tried so hard to hide. A cold, gentle realization washed over me. There were pieces of my past I had packed away, just like this backpack, thinking they didn't matter anymore. But clearly, they did. And Liam was connected to all of it. Still, one thing didn't make sense. If he cared this deeply back then, if he left messages and notes and kindness so quietly, why didn't he ever tell me? Why leave without a goodbye? And why hide these clues like he was preparing me for something I wouldn't understand until now? I placed the photograph beside the note, both of them glowing faintly in the afternoon light spilling through my window. They looked small, so small, yet each carried a weight I wasn't sure I was ready for. But memories have a stubborn way of breaking through once the door is cracked open. And this time, one finally did. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't hit me like a movie flashback. It came softly, almost shyly, like a memory that had been waiting for permission to return. I remembered a day in the courtyard. The same courtyard in the photo. I was sitting alone, pretending to do homework but mostly staring at the ground the way I usually did. It was one of those mornings when everything felt off, like the world was tilted slightly, and I couldn't find my balance. Then Liam sat down next to me. Not too close. Not crowding me. Just close enough that I felt, noticed. He didn't say anything at first. We just sat there, listening to the wind press through the old trees. Then he spoke, quietly, like he wasn't sure if he should. "Do you ever feel like people see you, but don't really see you?" The question startled me. It was exactly how I felt, but I didn't know how to answer. So I just nodded, very small. Liam nodded too, as if I had said something profound. He didn't ask anything else. He didn't dig. He just stayed. That moment, simple as it was, stayed tucked in some corner of my mind. But I had convinced myself it wasn't important. That it was just a quiet morning with a quiet classmate. Now, sitting with the note and photo in front of me, I realized something. Liam hadn't been guessing. He understood me deeply, even when we barely spoke. But another memory followed, one I had tried to forget. A week before he moved away, he asked if I ever checked the small pocket inside my backpack. I told him no. He smiled a little, the kind of smile people give when they hope you'll understand something later. "Maybe you should look in there someday," he said. At the time, I shrugged it off. I thought he was talking about homework or a lost pencil. I didn't think he meant this. I swallowed hard. Liam hadn't left the note by accident. He hadn't hidden the photo randomly. He had planned this. But why? Why leave pieces of himself behind like breadcrumbs? Why hope I'd find them years later, when he wasn't around to explain anything? And then another question rose, one I hadn't dared ask. How did he know I'd need this someday? Something inside me tightened, not fear, not exactly, but something close. Because the way he looked at me in that photograph. The way he left those messages. It felt like he knew something about my story, my life, that I didn't. Something I was only beginning to uncover. The questions swirling in my head felt too big for the small, quiet room I was sitting in. I stood up, holding the note and the photo carefully, and walked to my window just to breathe. The sky outside was turning that pale gold that comes before sunset. Kids were riding bikes down the street, neighbors chatting over fences. Normal life. Ordinary life. It was strange how a single rediscovered backpack could suddenly make my own life feel anything but ordinary. I needed answers. I needed to know why Liam left these things for me. And more than anything, I needed to remember the pieces of the story I'd pushed away. As I turned back toward my bed, something caught my eye. A shadow moved across the window. Then came a soft knock at the front door. My heart jolted. I wasn't expecting anyone. I rarely had visitors at all. For a moment, I didn't move. I just listened, waiting to hear another knock, or footsteps walking away. Instead, there was only stillness. Finally, curiosity won. I tucked the note and photo into my pocket and went downstairs, each step echoing louder than it should have. When I opened the front door, no one was there. Not again. Just like that day all those years ago, the one with the candy and the note, there was only something left on the doormat. This time, it was a small envelope. White. Clean. Unweathered, as if it had been placed there seconds ago. My breath hitched. I picked it up slowly. It wasn't heavy, but it felt important, too important. My name was written on the front. Same handwriting. Same soft, careful lettering. My fingers trembled. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. I opened it. There were no long sentences. No explanations. Just 3 words. Look for me. The message hit me like a quiet shock, simple, yet somehow life-changing. Look for me. Was Liam back? Was he here? Had he been nearby all this time? I stepped outside, scanning the street, searching for any sign of movement. But the road was empty. Just the echo of distant laughter and the hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had walked away only moments earlier. Someone who didn't want to be seen, but wanted to be found. I clutched the envelope tightly, a strange mixture of hope and confusion rising in my chest. Liam had already given me a message from the past, but this was something different. This was a message for the present. And it meant the story wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I stood on the porch longer than I meant to, the evening breeze brushing past me as if urging me to step off the edge of the familiar and into something I hadn't faced in years. Look for me. Those 3 words kept circling in my mind, soft but insistent. They didn't feel like a demand. They felt like an invitation, one written by someone who knew how to speak quietly enough for me to actually listen. I walked back inside, closing the door gently, still holding the envelope as if it might disappear if I let go. The house felt different now, charged, somehow. Like someone had turned up the volume on the silence. I went back to my room and laid the new message next to the old note and the photograph. 3 pieces of the same story, but only one felt like a beginning rather than an ending. That's when I noticed something about the envelope. The back flap wasn't sealed all the way. And tucked just inside the fold, something thin and rough, was a tiny scrap of paper I hadn't seen earlier. I pulled it out. It wasn't a note. It was a torn piece of a map. My breath caught. Not a full map, just a corner. The kind you'd rip off quickly if you didn't want to give away the whole picture. On it was part of a street name, half faded from being folded too long. Row Street. Row Street. The name lit up a part of my memory the way a match flares to life in the dark. There was only one place in town with that ending, Willow Rose Street, a quiet road near the old park where kids used to play baseball until the lights went out. I hadn't been there in years. Not since before middle school ended. Why would Liam point me there? I traced a finger over the torn map piece. The edges were jagged, as if ripped hurriedly. At the top corner, in the same handwriting as the note, were two more words. You'll know. A shiver ran through me, not fear, but recognition. Like something inside me had been gently nudged awake. I remembered something else then. A moment so small I had never thought about it again. One afternoon, near the end of the school year, Liam asked if I'd ever been to the old baseball field on Willow Row. I told him no. He nodded slowly, almost thoughtfully, and said, "Maybe someday you'll find something there." Back then, it sounded random, just a comment. Kids say things without meaning them. I didn't think anything of it. But now? Now it felt intentional. A message sent through time, disguised as a casual conversation. I looked around my room, at the old backpack, the photograph, the notes. All of it pointing in the same direction. Toward a place I hadn't visited in nearly a decade. Toward someone I hadn't seen even longer. My heartbeat steadied, not calmer, just clearer. Like something inside me had made a decision before I even spoke it out loud. If Liam wanted me to look, I would. But I had no idea what I was walking toward. Or what he had been waiting for me to find. I didn't leave right away. I just sat there, holding the torn piece of map between my fingers, letting the weight of everything settle. It felt strange, how a normal day had turned into this slow unraveling of a past I didn't even realize was unfinished. But eventually, something shifted in me. A pull. A direction. A quiet certainty. I grabbed my jacket, slipped the notes and photograph into my pocket, and headed out the door. The walk to Willow Row wasn't long, but it felt like traveling back through time. The closer I got, the more the world around me seemed to quiet down, like the town itself remembered something too, something it had been holding on to. Willow Rose Street was exactly how I remembered it, narrow, lined with old trees that arched over the road like they were trying to protect it from the years. The park sat off to the side, the baseball field still visible through the chain-link fence. But everything looked smaller now. Like the past always does when you return to it. I stepped onto the cracked pavement of the field, the sandy dirt crunching softly under my shoes. The bleachers were rusted, paint peeling in long flakes. The dugouts were faded, half covered with vines. The whole place looked like it had been abandoned by time. Yet somehow, it felt familiar. Almost welcoming. As if it had been waiting. I walked toward the old bleachers without knowing why. They were the same ones kids used to climb on during summer games, the ones that always left traces of chipped silver paint on the backs of your legs. Halfway there, something caught my eye. A carving in the wood. It looked fresh, not new, but newer than the rest. Someone had scratched initials into the bench, surrounded by a faint circle, like a marker for whoever needed to find it. I leaned closer. L.R. Liam Rivers. My breath tightened. He had been here. Not just years ago, more recently. Recently enough that the carving wasn't weathered away. My heart beat faster, driven by something halfway between hope and disbelief. I ran my fingertips over the letters, feeling each groove, each intentional line. And that's when I noticed there was more. Just beneath the initials, almost hidden, was another message carved lightly beneath the bench's edge. Underneath. I froze. Underneath what? I knelt down, brushing away old leaves and dirt. The space beneath the bleachers was darker than I expected, but something was there, a small tin box, dusty, dented, tucked carefully out of sight. A box that definitely hadn't been there when I was younger. My throat tightened as I reached for it. The metal felt cold against my palms, even under the warm evening light. I sat back on the grass, box in hand, my pulse loud in my ears. Slowly, carefully, I opened the lid. Inside, something lay wrapped in old paper. Yellowed. Fragile. Protected. I lifted it out with both hands. It was a notebook. Thin, worn, the cover soft from being held too much. And on the front, written in that same familiar handwriting. For when you're ready. I swallowed hard. Ready for what? For a long moment, I just held the notebook in my hands. It was lighter than I expected, like something that shouldn't be capable of holding anything heavy. But my chest knew better. Whatever was inside had waited years to reach me. I brushed my thumb over the words on the cover. For when you're ready. Ready. He wrote that as if he somehow knew what version of me might open this someday. As if the person I was back then wasn't prepared, couldn't be prepared, for what he wanted me to know. I took a slow breath and opened the notebook. The first page was blank. But the second page... that's where everything began. At the top, in Liam's careful handwriting. If you're reading this, it means you found the signs I left. Good. I hoped you would. My pulse quickened. I turned the page. There's something I wished I could have told you back then. But you were going through more than you knew how to say. And I didn't want to add weight to what you were already carrying. A familiar ache tugged at my chest, an old one I didn't talk about even now. Back in middle school, I didn't have the words for what I felt. I just knew I always felt different, quieter, heavier inside. And I worked hard to make sure nobody noticed. But apparently, someone had. I read on. Do you remember the day you sat alone in the courtyard? You looked like the world was pushing you into a corner you couldn't escape. My throat tightened. I didn't know how to say it then. But you weren't invisible to everyone. I felt that line. Deeply. My eyes moved to the next one. I didn't want you to think you were strange. Or broken. Or hard to care about. My breath caught. A lump formed in my throat so quickly I had to shut my eyes for a second. It was like Liam had reached through time, placing words exactly where I needed them. I turned another page, carefully, because the paper felt fragile. This one was different. Shorter. Simpler. I saw you. Not the version you tried to be. But the real you. And the real you mattered. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Because at 13, I didn't believe anyone saw me at all. I closed the notebook halfway, overwhelmed by the rush of old feelings, loneliness I didn't want to admit, exhaustion I didn't understand, and now, this weird warmth rising in my chest, as if someone had turned on a light in a room I forgot existed. I opened the notebook again, turning to the next page. At the top was a date. A date from the week he moved away. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I wasn't given a choice. My breath froze. He never told anyone why he left. Teachers shrugged, classmates whispered, and I never asked because I didn't think I deserved to know. But here, in this notebook, he was finally telling me the truth. Before I went, I hid a note in your backpack. I hoped you'd find it then. But maybe it's better that you found it now. The words blurred slightly as I blinked, my heartbeat steady but heavy. There were still so many pages left. Pages he wrote for me, quietly, privately, like he knew someday I'd need them. The final line on the page made my breath stop completely. There's one more thing you have to know before you understand everything. I looked up from the notebook, the evening light fading fast, shadows stretching across the field as if the world was holding its breath right along with me. Whatever came next. It was the truth Liam had carried all this time. The truth he thought I was finally ready to hear. The shadows around the field were getting longer, stretching like they were reaching for the past right alongside me. I held the notebook close, feeling the thin pages flutter slightly in the breeze, like the story inside was breathing. I turned to the next page. This one looked different. The handwriting was a little shakier, like Liam had written it quickly, or like the words were hard for him to get out. At the top, he wrote, "This is the part one never said out loud." My chest tightened. I kept reading. "The year we met, you weren't the only one struggling. You didn't know it, but I was going through things at home I didn't know how to talk about." I swallowed. I didn't know anything about his home life. None of us did. Liam had always been quiet, a little distant, but gentle in ways most kids our age didn't know how to be. I had assumed he was just shy. But maybe quiet wasn't the whole story. I didn't want anyone to see what was happening. Especially you. You were the one person who made things feel less heavy, even when we barely spoke. A warmth settled in my chest, unexpected, almost painful. I turned the page. "That's why I noticed you. Not because you stood out. But because you hid the same way I did." That line, simple, honest, made me stop breathing for a moment. Because it was true. We were two quiet people in a world that rewarded loudness. But I had never realized someone else was hiding behind the same walls I built. The next lines were written darker, as if he pressed harder with the pen. "I wanted to help you, even if I didn't know how. Leaving notes was the only thing I could do without drawing attention. I thought of the tiny envelope on my doorstep years ago. The quiet candy. The soft message. He had been reaching out even then. And now, again." I turned another page, feeling something shift, like the story was getting closer to a truth he had struggled to tell. The next entry was longer. "My family moved suddenly because someone finally stepped in. Not for me. For my little sister." I blinked. I never knew he had a sister. I wasn't allowed to say goodbye. But I wanted you to know the real reason, so you wouldn't think I walked away from you. The words hit harder than I expected. I hadn't realized until that moment how much a part of me did think that. That he left because I didn't matter enough to stay. But that had never been the truth. I turned the page again. The next line made my heart pound. "You were the one person I worried about leaving behind." My hands tightened on the notebook. There were only a few pages left. The end of the notebook felt close, too close, and yet I knew the most important truth was still waiting. Then I reached the final sentence on the page. "Everything I left for you, the note, the photo, this notebook, was so you'd know the truth I couldn't say back then." I stared at the words for a long moment, feeling the weight of them settle into me. What truth? What had he been carrying all these years? And why did it feel like the next page would change everything I thought I remembered about him, about us, about that time in my life? The wind shifted gently, rustling the pages. It almost felt like the world was telling me, "Turn the page. You're ready." I took a deep breath and turned the page. The handwriting was familiar, but it carried a weight I hadn't seen in any of the previous pages. It was the last message Liam had written, a message meant to close the years of distance between us, even if he wasn't here to say it aloud. "If you're reading this, it means you've found everything I left behind. I don't expect you to understand all of it right away. But I want you to know this." I held the notebook closer, my fingers trembling slightly. "You were never alone. Even when I couldn't be there, even when life felt heavy, you mattered to me. Your kindness, your strength, your quiet heart, it changed me, even when I didn't say it. And one day, I hoped you'd know that the world saw you, even if you didn't see it yourself." I closed my eyes. My chest ached with a mixture of relief and sadness. All those years of questions, of wondering why he left, of feeling invisible, it had never been about me not mattering. He had carried the weight silently. And now he had finally given me the gift of understanding. I opened the final page. "I wanted to tell you that sometimes the people who leave first are the ones who care the most. I hoped you'd find the courage to see the signs I left behind. And I hope, one day, when life feels too heavy, you remember this: you are never too small to matter. You were worth saving, and you always will be. Liam. I sat back on the grass, the notebook resting on my lap, and let the words sink in. The sun had nearly disappeared behind the trees. Shadows stretched across the field, but the light that remained felt warmer somehow. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Truly seen. The pieces of my past, lost moments, quiet struggles, unanswered questions, all made sense in a way they hadn't before. I thought about the backpack, the notes, the photograph, and the journey that had led me here. And I smiled softly. A gentle, grateful smile. Because Liam's words weren't just for the past. They were for me, now. A reminder that even when life feels lonely, there is always someone who notices, who cares, and who believes in you, even from afar. I closed the notebook, carefully placing it back in the tin box under the bleachers. Some stories aren't meant to end with closure, they're meant to leave a quiet echo that carries with you forever. And Liam's echo had finally reached me. I stayed there a while longer, sitting on the grass at Willow Row, letting the quiet wrap around me. The field was empty now, the chain-link fence glowing faintly under the last light of dusk. The notebook, the photograph, the notes, they weren't just objects anymore. They were pieces of a story I hadn't realized I needed. Pieces of Liam, his kindness, and his unspoken understanding. I ran my fingers over the tin box one last time before closing it, tucking it back beneath the bleachers. It felt sacred, a small time capsule holding proof of someone who had cared more than I could have guessed. I thought about how I had worried, all these years, that I had been invisible. That no one really saw me. And yet here was Liam, leaving breadcrumbs of hope, proof that even in silence, someone had noticed and cared deeply. I realized then that this wasn't just a story about the past. It was about carrying that memory forward. About letting the kindness I received echo in my life, in the ways I reached out to others, quietly but meaningfully. Life moves on. People come and go. Some stories end abruptly. But the quiet truths, the gentle acts that go unnoticed, can last a lifetime. Liam's words reminded me that even a single person noticing you, believing in you, can make all the difference. I stood up, brushing off my jeans, and looked one last time at the fading field. Willow Row Street seemed smaller, calmer, as if it, too, had fulfilled its purpose. The backpack waiting at home, the notes, the photograph, they were now part of my story. My reminder that I mattered. That moments of quiet connection, even those that seem small or unseen, shape us in ways we only recognize years later. I started walking home, the evening air cool and gentle, carrying Liam's words in my heart. Somewhere, he had left pieces of himself, and in finding them, I had found something I didn't know I was missing, a sense of being seen, understood, and valued. And that would stay with me forever. I walked the last few blocks home, the notebook and memories resting gently in my mind. The streets were quiet, the evening calm, and yet my heart felt full, lighter than it had in years. Liam's words echoed softly with every step: you were worth saving. Simple. True. And now, I finally understood them. Not just as something from the past, but as a lesson for the present. Back in my room, I placed the backpack carefully in its corner. I didn't need to open it again. The messages, the photograph, the notebook, they had given me everything I needed. Closure. Understanding. Hope. I sat by the window, looking at the fading sky, and realized how small gestures, notes tucked away, quiet moments shared, unseen acts of care, can change a life in ways you never expect. And maybe that's the most important thing. Even when people leave, even when life feels heavy, the care they give quietly can stay with you forever. I whispered a soft thank you to the empty room, to the past, to Liam. For seeing me. For leaving me a trail to find. For teaching me that even in silence, kindness can be life-changing. And as night fell, I smiled, knowing that the world still holds gentle truths. You just have to be ready to find them. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, like, subscribe, and share. It might help someone else see that even quiet acts of care can change a life.